he said, Mike, you've been in the bar all day. He said, you'd better not drive. Come with me. When I looked at his Pioneer pen, I said, there's a rock of sense, you know. I'll go with him. We didn't go one exit on the turnpike. There was a pile-up, and I went through the windshield of his car. Yeah, so much for the
Pioneer.
Yeah, Pioneer. I ended up in Greenwich Hospital.
Ooh, for how long?
Oh, just overnight. I missed work the next day because of it.
Yeah, you were a lucky man, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were. Yeah.
It was the explaining I had to do how I got a bashed up head.
Teresa didn't want to hear too much about that.
Been staying home with getting some rest. Yeah.
Did you have children?
No.
No children. Okay. Did you find that when you were socializing, you looked mostly to socialize with Irish people?
Well, the Hibernians were Irish and Irish Americans, and then I joined the Knights of Columbus at the same time, so that was a wide open area. We used to have a contest between whether the Italians or the Irish would get to be Grand Knight, and it was always the Italians that were winning, and he said, we won again. But it was a fun thing.
Now, Teresa, because she was really brought up more American than Irish, did she still grow up in a somewhat of an Irish culture?
She did, yeah.
Yeah. So she was happy to be doing all the Irish things, or did she kind of pull you into American things like going to baseball games or things?
No, she didn't pull me into the baseball things. No. I don't know, we were very compatible with the kind of a life we led in those days anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she really liked the Irish kind of.
Oh yes, she did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's very lucky. Yeah, that's right. What's one of your fondest memories when you think back over your life when you were a child in Ireland? Well, how old were you when you left Ireland? You were
22.
22. Okay. What was like a really fond memory that you'd have of being a child in Ireland?
Well, when I was a child, to get to Ballina for a day was a big treat. In those days, we got maybe to the agricultural show at Ballina was a big treat. There wasn't. It was mostly. They depended on the kids to do an awful lot of work in Ireland in those days. And if you call that fond memories.
Well, it sounds like when you were a teen, dancing was fun.
Oh, that. We were able to get our own way then.
Yeah, yeah. And where did you go to dance, you said?
Inniscrone, the Marine Ballroom. That's not even there anymore. Yeah. How life has changed.
What was a ballroom like? Was it really like, I always think of a ballroom as having glittery lights around it.
It was huge. They used to have great bands. Have you ever heard of Victor Sylvester that used to play on the BBC Light programme? Uh-huh. He played there. Dublin bands that...
Name some of them. What kind of names?
I can't think of. Victor Sylvester comes to mind because he was always on the BBC. He used to be playing... his selection would go out to such a one in Caracas, Venezuela, or someone in Pakistan, or that's how you learn geography, from listening to him, all the different countries where he was sending the music to. Music while you work.
And was it Irish music?
No, ballroom.
Ballroom.
Yeah.
You had a radio, obviously, and I've often heard people say BBC was the big thing that you listened to.
Yeah.
Was there any Irish radio stations?
Yes, Radio Éireann, of course, yeah.
And would they have more of a tendency to play Irish music?
You'd have Irish music, and you'd have...
popular music like
popular, yeah, but not more Irish than popular. More, I'd say more high class.
Oh, like classical
Simply
music?
Classical, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when you went to the dances, did you ever, was that a place you met girls, or would you take a girl to a dance? Would you actually?
Mostly you'd meet them.
Meet them there.
Yeah.
And what was that like? What was the atmosphere like in a dance?
I'll tell you a funny story about. I went to when I first started going to dances, I went to this dance around the Christmas time in Eastgate, and when the fellas that hang around the bars came in later, there was a fight started on the floor. And my cousin said to me, "Oh, this is good. Stand up on the seat," and I stood up to the wall. I had a new suit on, and he said, "This is getting better." There was this one ring, then there was two rings. There was a 3-ring fight going. This was the first time I was at a dance and that I left home. But when I tried to get down, I was stuck to the wall because Miss Kinney that owned this ballroom, she'd newly painted for Christmas and it wasn't dry yet.
Oh my gosh. And a
there,
brand new suit.
there goes my suit. They had to pull me down off the wall.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if they're happy moments, but it's all right to look back and laugh about it.
Yeah, now you can. What did you do about the suit? Did you continue wearing it with the paint on it?
I think it came off, but I'm not.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Jeez. How about, well, that's pretty much a hometown moment too. How about birthdays or things like that? What were the celebrations for a birthday or Easter or something like that, a holiday type of a...
Easter was, there was never a celebration for birthdays that I remember of. Never. For us.
You knew it was your birthday?
Oh yeah, you knew it was your birthday, but that was all there was to it.
Yeah. Just kind of marked that today's your birthday, so you knew you were another day older.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be asking for a new suit that you're getting too big for the old one.
But something like by Easter, would that be a time when you'd be getting new clothes or things like that?
That was more for the ladies, Easter finery. A hat, or Easter bonnet, but not, I don't remember ever getting anything new for Easter.
How about like when you made your first Holy Communion or something like that? Was that, I know here now it's gotten to be a big thing, and even in Ireland, where they had huge parties afterwards and all this finery. Was it like that then? No,
it wasn't. Not in the country place anyway. It is now. It's a big thing now. But it wasn't then.
Yeah. But it was an important time though.
Yeah, but don't forget, we're talking about the war years too.
Right. Yeah.
Things were different then.
Did your relatives in the United States send things to you during the war?
They did, yes.
They did.
Yeah.
You hear a lot.
But we had no electricity. All we had was kerosene lamps, and then you didn't get kerosene half the time. You couldn't get it.
Yeah.
I remember doing homework at home. We put a log in the fires. Some of the pit props that we washed ashore, they were great for sparkling. They'd light up the kitchen. When it lit up, you'd read fast, and when it died down, you couldn't see where you were.
Wow. What year did electricity come to your area? At what time?
I think it was, I'm sure, 46 or 47 or something like that.
So you had it fairly early.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a long time.
No, we were one of the first areas because of the fact that they were all small farms and they were close together. Whereas out in rural, say in Meath or someplace where you'd have big farms, it wasn't a good place for the ESB to experiment with rural electrification. But our place was ideal for it because of the concentration of houses in very close together.
How close was the nearest town, like where you would go to do your shopping and things like that from your house?
Ballina was the nearest market town, which was 15 mile away. Eastgate would was about 5 miles. Eastgate was, you wouldn't get everything you want in Eastgate, but there was a fella in Eastgate, his name was Jimmy Clark. He sold everything. If he didn't have it, he'd get it for you. If you asked him for today's paper, when he sold all the papers, they're all sold. He said there was nothing on it anyway, he says. Did you read yesterday's? He'd sell you yesterday's paper. He says, twice as much reading on yesterday's paper.
Good salesman.
Yeah.
Good salesman, yeah. So now if you needed to go into to do some shopping, how did you go? How did you get there?
You had the bus. There's a morning bus, an afternoon bus, and an evening bus.
So it was so you could go in and spend the day, or
You
could
spend
come
the
back.
day or spend half a day, whichever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now is that where you sold your cattle? Was it at the marketplace?
Well,
then?
they used to have what they called fairs in those days.
Uh-huh.
A fair was a cattle mart in the town. They'd have it on the main street in those days. Not
Yeah.
anymore. Or a field. Like Dromore West would be a fair green. And Collins was a fair green. But they would block the road too. That's why when you're going by in those days, the bus would have to crawl past all these cattle for sale.
And how often was there a fair day like that?
Well, there was, the one in Collins is the one I remember most. Is the 22nd of every month there was a fair.
Oh, okay.
And then in the Eastgate there'd be occasional fairs, not in every month the fair, but
And did you go with your father to sell? Would
Yeah.
you make a fair day a regular part of your?
you would, because you'd have to drive the cattle there and drive them home. They weren't taken by truck or anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what time would you have to leave the farm? Early
Early in the morning.
and how would you get home then?
Walk home.
Walk back.
Yeah.
And did you most of the time sell everything that you brought with you? Do you have
If you were lucky, you did, and if you weren't, you'd have to take them back home with you.
take them back home?
It
Did you
depends.
also buy things at that time? yourself?
Sometimes, yeah.
Like
Hmm.
that you wanted to have for the farm yourselves, and you should bring them back. Yeah. And would that, when it's an all-day event, you'd get there in the morning? What time would you be getting back in the?
Well, if you sold them early, you could get home any time then. But if you didn't, if it was a slow day, you'd have to wait till. Lucky if you sold them later on in the afternoon.
What was the difficulty in selling? Why wouldn't, if people were there to buy, why were they not just buying yours?
Well, that's part of the custom, they weigh you down. If you didn't sell if there was a good run on cattle and they were needed, the cattle buyer would buy them early in the morning because he wouldn't get them later on. If there wasn't a good run, they would hang out and cut you down. Actually, the price they'd offer you in the morning would probably be less in the afternoon, because you either had to take it or take them home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I never liked the business of fair because it was then they changed to cattle marts, which is like an auction. You can send anybody with cattle to an auction. You get the same as the next person.
So was it now, like, would your father deal directly with the person who was buying, or would he be selling to a?
He would deal directly with the person that was buying. Yeah, at the fair in the old days.
Yes, and they would then take home his cattle
Yeah.
after they shook hands. Would money be exchanged right then?
Oh yes, yeah,
Okay.
cash.
All right, yeah. So it wasn't. It was more of a business day. It wasn't a celebration day. When we
No,
think of fairs
no.
now, you think of it as being a.
Some might celebrate it, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So here a fair is more. I'm thinking like Puck Fair.
Oh, no,
It
no,
was not
no.
like that at all. Right.
Mhm.
When you were if you were thinking back to being a child, what did the sky look like to you during the day?
Well, sometimes it looked beautiful, just picture perfect, and other days the clouds was ready to hit you on the head, pouring rain. There's not if you got a whole week in Ireland in my day that didn't rain, it would be an exceptional week. Then they'd be out praying for rain because the grass would be dry and nothing to eat.
Yeah.
So it was it was one way of keeping them always to the prayer business. Yeah, they're praying for rain or praying that it would stop.
And so that's changed. The weather has really changed in Ireland, hasn't it?
I think it has, yeah.
You have longer spells.
Yeah.
Did you have snow when you were a kid?
We never had snow in where I come from. Not enough to build a snowman anyway.
Yeah.
But if you look across the water to Donegal, you see snow in the mountains. Or snow in Navan. We could see Navan from our door. Navan is on the other side of County Mayo.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a long way.
But it's a high mountain. You can see it.
And so it must have been quite a difference to come here to the snow, huh?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially to come to Canada.
And how about a night sky?
Yeah, we see the northern lights that they talk about a lot here. I never see them. Yeah.
Um, I always think when I'm there that the skies are just incredible. You could sit all day long and just watch the sky. Um, how's Ireland changed since you came here, do you think?
Oh, it's changed. But I haven't been back in 10 years, so I know that I'm in for quite a surprise when I go back next time.
When are you going back?
I don't know. The next, either this year or next year, hopefully.
Yeah, good.
Hopefully.
Yeah, but even then, 10 years ago, what was your impression of how things had changed?
Well, for one thing, was that all your friends from way back were all gone or old or had moved someplace. It's amazing the changes. Of course, I haven't been back since the euro came into. That's another big change. I think the only change that I saw was they had changed the pound from being 240 pence to 100 pence.
Wow.
That was a change. They were getting ready for the decimal system then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did your life change by coming here instead of staying in Ireland? What was the most significant change, do you think?
I guess the first change was being a farmer's son, I get paid for working. You know, when you work on a farm, you don't get a weekly wage.
Yeah.
Not in our day. How did it change us? I'll tell you, in my 2 years in Canada was probably the best 2 years of my life. I enjoyed life. I never made any money worth talking about, but they were good years.
What was so
Fun.
special about those? What made them so good?
Well, the fact that I was in my 20s and got my first car and could drive 500 miles and ask anybody or tell anybody where you were going. Yeah. And there was a lot of Irish in Toronto at that time. A funny story about Jerry Stagg, my friend, from waiting for him in Montreal the day I arrived, another day, hoping that we'd all be together, him and his friend Brennan. And he told me he's going to stay in Montreal because Brennan had a sister there. And I had already paid my passage to Toronto, so I said, well, I'm not staying here. I'm going on my own then. And he said, I'll walk you down to the station. And he walked me to the station and he said goodbye. He said, I'll see you around. I said, gee, that's a funny thing for him to say, I'll see you around. This is a big country. So I don't know how many miles, thousands of miles it's across, and he wasn't thinking of going to the North Pole at that time, but going up to the north is good. So that's the last I'm going to see of Jerry. So I've developed my own ways, and in Toronto, I'd go down to St. Mary's on Sunday night. That's the only place with any amusement. There was dancing on Sunday night. Usually they'd have a table at the door and collect. So this night, this guy comes in and he said to the girls at the door, does anybody here know a guy named Devaney? I said, yeah, he's standing over there, that pole. That's how he said, I'll see you around.
He would send people?
He made it to Toronto. He had been all over Canada at that time.
Wow.
And he was working on the Seaway. So he told me that's the place to be, on the Seaway. And that's why I started working on the Seaway, because of him.
Wow.
We worked together then for as long as we were there.
Wow. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah, but that always sticks in my craw. I'll see you around, Devaney. In a country that none of us having an address.
Right, yeah.
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 How are you going to see somebody?
Yeah. How did you keep in touch with your family back home when you first came over?
By letter, writing.